I know that Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, all those guys, they are principled conservatives. Now, they wouldn't get swayed by money or sponsors or anything like that, right? I mean, if there's one thing they care about, it is conservative ideology / a ton of money. So Politico has a terrific article from Kenneth Vogel and Mackenzie Uygur about how the Tea Party has directed millions of dollars to all of those conservative talk show hosts and basically pretty much bought their opinions. And Mark Levine is the best example of that. I'll give that to you in a second. First of all, they explained the amount of money involved. Conservative groups spent nearly $22 million to broker and pay for involved advertising relationships known as sponsorships with a handful of influential talkers, including Beck, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Mark Levine, and Rush Limbaugh between the first talk radio deals in 2008 and the end of 2012. That is a tremendous amount of money in 4 years. Now, this is why the right wing will always say, like, the left wing, you're bought by Soros. Now, there is no such thing. But of course, on the right wing side, since that's how they operate, they're like, I'm bought by Americans for Prosperity or whoever funded me last, right? So I assume the left wing does the same. Well, there isn't that much money to be made in the left wing. That's partly the reason why the left wing probably isn't bought, right? It's like, for example, when the Koch brothers buy Rush Limbaugh and Rush Limbaugh argues for lower taxes, the Koch brothers walk away with billions of dollars saved in lower taxes. So they have an incentive to spend $22 million to buy all these talk show hosts. Whereas the left-wing donors are usually doing it because they think it's good for the country. That's great, but it's not going to get you $22 million over 4 years. And it's one thing to say, hey, I like this product. I think a lot of people, almost everybody in radio does that, and a lot of people in media do that, and that's fair, that's sponsorships. There's nothing wrong with sponsorships, right? It's another thing when you're not transparent about it. When you pretend that you have core political ideas, which are in fact purchased at a good price, by the way, of $22 million. Now we'll give you more examples of how they turn in a second. Now, one of the guys who was doing the purchasing was Dick Armey. Now, he's a former House Majority Leader, but he used to also run FreedomWorks, one of the guys paying these good hosts. And I say good in an ironic way. And Dick Armey explains, people like Beck and Hannity and Rush are nothing without the people who faithfully hang on their every word. I consider that a constituency trust that should be respected. Meanwhile, of course, he did not respect it. He's had a falling out with FreedomWorks since then and is now exposing this. By the way, he got an $8 million payout by FreedomWorks so he didn't cause more trouble. Because he knows all their dirty secrets. He knows where the bodies are buried. And in this case, he's telling us, yeah, we used to buy these guys off, and they willingly violated the trust of their audience. So more details on that. For them to basically sell their influence, and this is, remember, the former Republican House Majority Leader, for them to basically sell their influence and say whatever the contract asks of them, it compromises the integrity of the pundit guru, as it were, and it's undignified expenditure on the part of the outfit that's mining the attention. Again, he would know because he was the guy paying them, okay? And he knows what's in the contract. That's why he references the things that they must say according to the contract. It's one thing to say, hey, you know what, I like this product. It's another thing to say, hey, I happen to agree with this ideology anyway, right? It's another thing to say, I will tell you exactly what it says in the contract is my actual earnest political opinion. That's a whole different ballgame. All right, now, how much do these guys get? Sean Hannity, sponsored by the Heritage Foundation, beginning in 2008, and he lent his name to fundraising drives. He regularly invited Tea Party Patriot leaders onto his shows and promoted Tea Party Patriots' website, HannityForSanity.com. Very clever. Originally, Heritage Foundation, he also got money from the Tea Party Patriots, okay? Hence promoting them. And by the way, maybe if Sean Hannity had any real opinions at all, he might like a different Tea Party group. I'm not saying that he's a moderate or a liberal in disguise and is just doing this all as a front, but it's one thing to look at all the different groups and say, I like this one better than the other. Like, for example, as a liberal, I really like Progressive Change Campaign Committee. If another liberal group paid me millions of dollars to say I like them more than I like Progressive Change Campaign Committee, that would be, to say the least, massively questionable. Which group does Sean Hannity actually agree with? Who knows? We know he gets paid by Tea Party Patriots, and he loves the Tea Party Patriots. So, whereas I think the Tea Party Ravens are much better. I've only made that joke at least a dozen times on the air. All right, Mark Levine. This is my favorite case. Paid $757,000 by Americans for Prosperity while boosting Utah Senator Orrin Hatch. Wait a minute, that's kind of curious. Orrin Hatch was considered not conservative enough by a lot of conservatives, but Americans for Prosperity favored him for whatever political reason, and Mark Levine, their paid bitch, would come out there and say, oh, Orrin Hatch is awesome. Later, Americans for Prosperity stopped giving money to Mark Levine, and he started being sponsored by the Tea Party Patriots, who do not like Orrin Hatch. He then apologized for endorsing Hatch, who was unpopular among Tea Party leaders, and said that he was now opposed to him. Mark Levine. Oh, I worked for Ronald Reagan. Oh, I'm so principled. Oh, I'm an intellectual. Pay me, pay me, pay me. Oh, I love Orrin Hatch. Oh, you're not paying me anymore? This guy's paying me to hate Orrin Hatch? Oh, I hate Orrin Hatch. He says, oh, no, in the middle there was some policy differences I had with him on immigration. Oh, really? You didn't know Orrin Hatch's immigration position or your own immigration position, and then you came upon that and it was like, oh, look at that, this bag of money I found to oppose Orrin Hatch. Yeah, immigration, right, of course, immigration. Oh, these guys have no principles. And look, it's one thing for liberals to make fun of them, moderates to shake their head. But if you're a conservative, you should be repulsed by this. They're playing you like a fool. Here's Rush Limbaugh. He received more than $9.5 million overall from the Heritage Foundation in recent years, ending in January. $1.4 million by FreedomWorks in 2012 to become an endorser. And by the way, some of this money makes sense, right? So they say, okay, look, FreedomWorks wants to recruit people, so they pay Rush Limbaugh, and Rush Limbaugh advertises. If all he did was advertise and he clearly labeled it, that'd be something else, right? And then he says, all right, go sign up for FreedomWorks, where there's a lot of conservatives, and then FreedomWorks gets the sign-ups, and then they get donations, and it makes sense, right? But by the way, this is really interesting. Turns out they're wildly ineffectual. They would only recover, according to Dick Armey, who was the one paying them, they'd only recover about a third of the money that they spent on those talk show hosts. So part of what they're doing here is not to actually get return on investment, but to buy these guys off. It's not just for the ad, it's to buy the host. So that they're like, oh, FreedomWorks is great, yes, of course, and I support whoever they support. And they would constantly have guests on. Beck did this all the time for the people who were sponsoring him. And he would talk wonderfully about that candidate that group was supporting, etc. And it's also partly to prop them up. Because these guys who claim to be capitalists, in fact, Rush Limbaugh's ratings are a disaster. Glenn Beck is getting kicked off of major markets left and right. Sean Hannity, same thing. Absolute epic disaster. What's keeping them afloat is $22 million from right-wing groups who are paying them basically to say lower taxes, less regulation, lower taxes, less regulation. We hate health care, proposals by Obama, et cetera, et cetera. It's all for their own political gain. If there was actually free market, probably almost all these guys would be out of business. Finally, we get to Glenn Beck. He has received more than $6 million in recent years to promote FreedomWorks. And what do you know? Had a number of people from supported and endorsed by FreedomWorks on his program, and he regularly directs viewers to donate to FreedomWorks on air and at live events. It's unclear whether the live events are part of his contract as well, or he throws that in as a freebie. Okay, so now next time you listen to these guys, understand that they're bought and paid for. Now you might not mind that. You might say, yeah, I love it when billionaires buy my talk show hosts and tell them what to think. Okay, and by the way, most of these groups are run and initially set up by, yes, the Koch brothers.